Support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Innovations of the digital age have enriched our lives with ready information and renewed productivity, not to mention connectivity and convenience. But at what cost? Cybersecurity breaches are ubiquitous. Hackers have compromised the data of retailers, healthcare providers, social networking sites, and even the federal government. The resulting invasions of privacy and misuse of assets, not to mention identity theft, have made headlines and wreak havoc on businesses across our region. Welcome to the most widely watched source for Carolina business and public policy. I'm Diane Bailey, filling in for Chris William. We are honored to welcome to the program 3 leading cybersecurity experts. Please stay with us.
Major funding also by Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, Cybersecurity, featuring Mike Holland of Fortalice Solutions, Pete Murphy from Cardinal Innovations, and Ted Claypoole from Womble, Carlyle.
Ted, Mike, Pete, thank you for joining us today to talk about the rapidly evolving world of cybersecurity. Mike, we're going to start with you.
Yep.
What is the biggest cybersecurity challenge for businesses today?
I think the biggest cybersecurity challenge is that businesses need to understand that they are targets. It's not it'll be somebody else, it'll never be me. They need to understand that they are targets. Whether it's intellectual property, cash, the hackers are after them. And if you don't have a robust cybersecurity program in place, I would ask that you consider getting one as soon as you can. To me, not having one is fiscally irresponsible for any business leader, whether it's an entrepreneur, whether they're a business leader in a well-to-do group, it doesn't really matter. You've got to have a robust cybersecurity plan. If you don't have one, put one in place.
So clearly the businesses have a responsibility to have a plan in place. But Ted, talk a little bit about our responsibility as individuals. You've co-authored 2 books with Teresa Payton on this topic. So what do we need to be doing?
Well, I think we need to be paying attention more than anything. It's all about digital hygiene as far as we're concerned. Seeing what's out there about you, first of all, because you have an internet identity, whether you know it or not. Check that out, test it, see what's out there, and then do what you can to modify it and make it what you want it to be rather than what other people are defining you as. And then on top of that, from a security standpoint, because that's important for security too, because the more people know about you, the more likely they are to be able to steal your identity, to be able to pretend that they are you or somebody in your family. And so the more you put out there, the scarier it is. But also get professional help if you can. Make sure that you are careful in your banking and the work that you do online, and make sure you're not showing your passwords to anybody.
Good advice. So Mike, talk a little bit about healthcare and the specific privacy concerns there.
Sure. I guess Willie Sutton used to rob banks because that's where the money was, right? And for a long time, banking and financial services industry was the leader in cybersecurity protection. Because they were the first and they were most heavily regulated. Other industries, such as healthcare, have been later up the maturity curve. But we're hearing a lot lately about the street value of your personal health information. The simple fact is that it's got value for many reasons, for fraud, for insurance fraud, but the street value of your personal health record is increasing. So healthcare companies are a little bit late to the game in this. So my advice to all the healthcare companies is to, what these gentlemen just said, get your act together, get a solid cybersecurity program in place, and get active, because they're already after the personal health records of your members.
20x value of a credit card, a healthcare record can be up to 20x in value on the black and the dark web.
Right.
The
There's a
web.
secondary market for information about you. So in other words, when people steal something about you, they can go out and there are marketplaces that they can sell it.
That's right.
And so 20 times your credit card value is your healthcare
So
information.
FICO, who does the consumer ratings, has just purchased a company that's going to provide cybersecurity ratings for companies. Can consumers use this information, do you think, to make informed judgments about with whom they choose to do business?
I think you should always be smart about with whom you're doing business, whether it's cybersecurity or where you interact. I mean, customers make brand decisions all the time, and if they've got the ability to see a cyber ranking, so to speak, sure, absolutely do it. And it's back to the original question about businesses. What are they concerned about? Well, if their ranking is low, it's like a health ranking for, you don't want to go to a restaurant in the 80s. You want to go to a restaurant that has a 100 score, right? One is making their 80. Right. Well, I would think the same thing here in cyber. And if you've got a lower ranking, then you've got to start correcting that, because as we go forward, these hackers aren't going away. I think that's part of the other issue, is that they live in places where we can't touch them. We can't extradite people from foreign countries that don't like America. And that's why their business is booming.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
This is also a very complex issue. I mean, there are many, many levels and facets to cybersecurity, whether it's your personal computer at home or your company that you're trying to protect. So Mike's right when it comes to, I'm not sure if this agency that's been announced is the perfect answer, but I think it's a start for some type of standards for companies to adhere to, for some kind of baseline for measurement. But there is no such thing as perfect security.
So Pete, talk a little bit more about that. We know that the criminals cannot be stopped. So when you look at putting in plans for detection and then how you respond, from Cardinal Innovation's perspective, how do you think about those next two phases?
Sure. We really think about three phases when it comes to security. We think about the protective side. What are we doing to prevent entry or access to a medical record or some piece of information that's important to our company? We also think about the detection side and when something happens, do we know it's happening, and how do we know it's happening, and what's the severity of it? And then the third part of that is how do you respond to what you now know is going on? From a company perspective, the cheapest side of this is to prevent, if it never happens in the first place. But since there is no such thing as perfect security, you have to have the other two to have a well-rounded security program. So at Cardinal Innovations, we look at security from a 360-degree perspective, and we invest a lot in preventing access in the first place. But there are people involved, and cyber criminals are exceptionally technical. They're fast. They communicate and collaborate with each other quickly, and they are, if we could get them to use their evil powers for good, I can only imagine where we might be technologically.
But Pete's exactly right on that. One of the issues here is that the problem is not in the software, not in the hardware, but in the wetware. It's in the interface. It's in us, because we are much easier to manipulate in many ways than the machines are. And so phishing, PH phishing, is always going to work to a certain extent, because people who are very clever and smart can make me or you think you're hearing from your children, your mother, your boss, and to answer that back. And so the issues really, in many ways, are with us as much as with the technology.
So Ted, be really specific with us. If you were to give individuals 3 things to do today to help them prevent this from happening, what would those things be?
Well, at least one is things not to do,
Sure.
which is don't when you're working with email, don't open emails from people you don't know, and certainly if you do open those, then don't open the attachments. Don't click on whatever's in the email. Don't go to those places. That's sort of the primary thing. The other is to think about everything critically. Whatever is coming in, whatever you're seeing, if it makes you question what you're doing and make you think about it,
Get rid of it.
get rid of it. Just dump it. You guys have a...
Yeah, I would follow on with that. The security technology and our ability to protect ourselves technically have dramatically increased in the last 10 or 15 years. There are some excellent technologies, but Ted's exactly right. The weak link in the chain is the human. And so that's why the predominance of cyber attacks these days are directed at individuals, not necessarily at the infrastructure or the computers anymore. They're facilitated through technology, but they're really coming through people. The increase in number of issues that we've seen in our company of targeted attacks directed at people through pH phishing have increased dramatically, and the methods they're using are exceptionally sophisticated.
Right.
So people will always click on links, but behind the people, you have to have a solid technology layer for when they do these things.
Well, let's give a specific, just very quickly. One of the frauds that's going around right now is that people in the treasury management part of large companies are receiving emails that look like they're coming from their own CFO or their own president. And it will say, please send all the W-2 forms for all our employees back to me so that I can use this for business. And if they don't look at it carefully enough, they're not going to know that really is going outside the company.
Yeah, and the way they do that, so one of the, you can send a company that's got 200 people in it a spear phishing email, and only takes one, and they won't necessarily go in the next day and ask for that information. It might be 6 months. That's the average time that a company is hacked and doesn't realize it is 6 months. So Fortalice customers that come to us, we help them on the people side just as much as we do on the network side because it's so important. And they literally go in and copy the brand exactly as it were from the company and the CEO. So when you get the email, you think it's legitimate.
Talk more about detection then. So you said there's a 6-month gap. How would you advise your clients to shrink that time so they're ahead of the problem?
We've talked about it just in these past few minutes. It's back to realizing that you are a threat. You are under attack. Don't consider yourself innocent in this. Go on offense. Offense wins, defense loses in cybersecurity. So if you think today is June, whatever, someone has been in my network since the first of the year. I need that plan in place as quickly as I can. So companies like ours, Fortalice does it, there are many others, but go get a plan.
Well, keep in mind that Verizon is now saying that 80% of the people that find out that they're hacked, find out from law enforcement. In other words, they don't know they're hacked because they found it. They only know they're hacked because law enforcement came in and said, we see you are being hacked because we're monitoring the bad guys.
Ted, I think the issue is that IT departments historically are designed to keep the 99.9% uptime in their networks. That's their job. Their job isn't to be experts in cybersecurity. And the technologies are changing all the time. The hackers, the bad actors, their ways of getting in are always changing. So we think it's not necessarily incumbent on the IT department to be responsible. Sure, the biggest of the banks and the largest of organizations, they've got whole security organizations that have this. But if you're a tier below that, go get professional help because your IT team is just trying to keep their network up and running.
You mentioned something interesting earlier about how the criminals are sharing information. Federal legislation was designed to help promote businesses collaborating together and sharing information. Is there a role for the government in addressing this problem?
Yeah, there absolutely is. As a matter of fact, way back in the Clinton administration, Presidential Decision Directive 63 was issued by the administration, and what that did partially, it did many things, but established the foundation for industry sectors, financial services, healthcare, transportation, to established what they call information sharing and analysis centers. So there are formal structures out there that exist that you can become a member of, and some of them, the cost of entry is very low, where they do nothing but share information about the threat environment, what's going on, and how to prevent these things inside your company. Now, I don't know how well known that is, but they've been around for a very long time, and they're very effective at disseminating information, connecting what the government knows from the intelligence side to what Homeland Security knows of it's actually going on inside the country, to sharing information between companies about what they're really seeing. So it's a way to bring the intelligence side of government, Homeland Security, and industry together in a way to collaborate and share so that you can protect yourself better.
Locally, the FBI InfraGuard is another organization that information security officers can get looped into. Often the discussions are anonymized, and you're not necessarily sharing your dirty laundry or your company secrets, but information security professionals need to be collaborative because we're all fighting a common enemy. None of us want to be the victim, and I think that's part of the other issue is you got to look at yourself as a victim of a crime. And this is where, Ted, in your legal aspect, that people who get hacked are just it's like being pickpocketed on the street. They're victims of crimes.
That's true.
Well, and it's not a customer differentiator. In other words, if you're working at Bank of America and Wells Fargo gets hacked, then people worry about the banking system as a whole. So other people getting hacked, other businesses getting hacked hurt your business also. So there's reasons to share, and there's reasons to share with the government in this case because the government has a lot more resources. You as a business only have a commercially reasonable amount of money to spend on defense.
Right.
And the Chinese army has a commercially unreasonable amount of money to spend coming after you.
Let's talk about the human capital to invest here. There clearly is a talent shortage in this area. What can we be doing, should we be doing to make sure that pipeline is full for the future?
Well, I'd just start and say we're already doing it here in Charlotte, and that UNC Charlotte has a fantastic data security program.
Excellent.
They're teaching kids both in undergrad and in graduate programs. Bill Chu over there is really fantastic, and they, those kids all get jobs. So if this is something that you're worried about for your child, direct them into this area because there are a lot of colleges really.
Well, and kids that are gamers and big into video games and things, they are thinking strategically about that game and about the way the enemy will come at them, and that's part of what this is all about too. Cybersecurity is thinking strategically, and I think part of the other problem is as we add to the talent pool, we've got to have people designing for the human. I think that often is a failure as well. You can have a 72 character password, but nobody's going to remember it, and they're not going to do it, and they're not going to remember it. So you've got to have some human side, both on the recognition that you can be a victim, but also on in the design side, you've got to make it easy for people to use.
Yeah, I'm going to second Ted's comment about UNC Charlotte. I mean, they have the #1 information security program in the area, in the region. And I will tell you, secondly, what makes a really good security professional, the technology is the technology. There are a lot of great technologists, but inquiring minds, people who just, it bothers them not to know, that keep pushing and digging, because these cyber criminals are so smart, and their techniques are so sophisticated, and they've developed methods that are so hard to detect. It might seem a little off, or something might seem a little wrong, and the ordinary person might just push on by as something, I'm not worried about that. It's really nothing to worry about. But people who are the best security analysts are people who don't stop at, I think that's just an anomaly. They dig and find. And those are the folks that make the best kind of security analysts. So the words used are ominous. Cybercrime, ransomware, malware, hackers, cyber attack. What is the big threat out there, and what is the exposure that we should be concerned about? Wow. I mean, I think it's been stated, but let me put it this way. We are all under attack, and we're all under attack constantly, whether you're a company or you're a person at home. I'll quick story, but back in the day, I'm talking about the late 90s when the internet was first really just beginning to expand. I was downloading and installing the early versions of personal protection at home and looking through the logs back in the late 90s of early internet days of who was trying to touch my computer and from where they were trying to touch it from. The list was shorter of countries that weren't trying to touch my computer. So it's been a few years since then. They've gotten smarter and faster. So the threat is everywhere. So you can't not be too careful. The tips and the advice that's been given here today has been awesome. But the simple fact is that we are under attack constantly, and people are the first line of defense. Inside a company like Cardinal Innovations, we start with the people side because that's where it lands first. But in a company, you have to have multiple layers. We look at a defense in-depth strategy, and when you look at the technologies that we have in place, because something will get through a human. We're fallible, and it just happens, and we can be fooled. So if you're deploying all the layers of technology, firewalls, intrusion detection, all these kind of things, you need to do more than what's generally available. There are technologies now that I'll say wedge themselves all the way down into the lowest level of the technology and look for anomalous behavior. So everybody has virus protection and malware protection, these ominous words you're talking about, because these things are nasty. But you have to have the maximum layer of technology protection as your backstop behind your people.
Well, and one of the problems you were asking about, one of the issues out there is the democratization of the tools, of the really terrible hacking tools. When we look at the Target hack, for example, that was basically done by somebody that bought a $2,500 tool from people that really knew how to design it in Russia. So any of us, I mean, this is a sophisticated group
That's the scary part.
but it's available for us, our kids, or anybody else that wanted to use it to go in and do sophisticated attacks. You don't need to be a superstar computer hacker to do it anymore. You just need to know where to find things.
Mike, we've got just a few minutes left, and I do want to talk about the cost. So $1 trillion expected to be spent over a 5-year period, 2017 to 21. Have the costs escalated as the threat continues to multiply? What can a business expect?
The businesses have to make decisions on what they can spend. Businesses have risk that they've got to absorb. I mean, we wake up today and you go run your business, you have risk. At Fortalice, our big story is make sure you're spending at least 10% of your IT budget on security. That's a good benchmark. If you're not spending the 10%, then we think you're being maybe a little bit, I'll just use the word irresponsible. You've got to protect your valuable information, your IP, et cetera. So 10% is a good number.
And that's one of the issues because for many people, it's a found cost. It wasn't in the budget last year, and you need to put it in the budget this year, which means you've got to have internal fights to get that money.
But the found expense of a hack is worse.
Much worse.
Right? Yeah, absolutely worse.
Pete, you're on the front lines in industry, and you're nodding your head vigorously.
Yeah.
How do you respond?
Yeah, I mean, the cost of avoidance versus the cost of a loss, right? I promise you that probably most everybody who will watch this program, or some large percentage of everybody who will see this program, has probably been served with a notice of a breach in the last 12 months. We've all received one that says, your account has been compromised and we're offering you credit monitoring protection. That has become the standard response to everything that's happening. Massive breaches, millions of people affected. My concern, I would say, is that we're becoming a little jaded to the fact that it happens all the time and the bank will handle it for me or credit protection monitoring will protect me. And I think people actually might be taking their foot off the gas a little bit as far as their awareness and their concern about actually taking proactive measures to protect themselves. The cost is staggering. It's in the billions of dollars, probably trending to trillions when you look at the actual cost of responding to a breach, cleaning up a breach, protecting the people who've been affected by a breach. It's a massive problem, and all starting with protecting yourself on the front line with the people in yourself at home or the people in your company.
Last word to you, Mike.
Play offense, don't play defense. Get some professional help for cybersecurity, Fortalice or someone else.
Offense, not defense.
Yeah, offense,
Right.
not defense.
People are the problem. Thank you very much. And to the viewers, we thank you for joining us and hope to see you next week.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.org.